Saturn, things are going to change significantly. March 7th, 2023 is a pretty important marker. It's the start of Saturn in Pisces. And this new ride for the planet that represents the limits of reality that can be perceived by ordinary consciousness is going to be traveling in a place where boundaries are a foreign language. And Saturn speaks boundaries really, really well. Anything is possible in Pisces. It's both an ending and it's a beginning. It's mystic. It's surrender in the purest form to something bigger, something hard to understand, something that's so vast and mysterious and imaginative and beautiful. Saturn is the planet of containment and reality, and it's going to be in Pisces until May of 2025. You remember those cartoons? There was always some character that they had a stick with a bag on it and they were traveling somewhere. It's like her handkerchief on a stick. I don't know why, but that's what they used. I imagine Saturn entering Pisces with a stick and a handkerchief, but it's empty. Saturn is the container. Saturn's gonna go into Pisces and fill up that sack with all these incredible souvenirs from Pisces land. In order to prepare for this period of time, I'm going to invite you to explore Saturn in Pisces through the form of a thought experiment. I'm gonna tell you a story. The Swiss geology professor, Jost Wintler, often hiked in the Alps. And over the years, he witnessed several people falling off the steep mountain inclines. He watched them experiencing something that looked obviously really tragic. Their bodies were being slammed and flipped and catapulted down the mountain. Then, one day, Jost himself took a wrong step, and he became the one falling. He slipped and fell 50 meters, which is 164 feet. Since he'd witnessed it before, other people falling, he expected to have a really horrific experience. But he found out that actually it was really different. A surprising scenario was occurring inside of him. As he fell, he was able to think about the physics of the fall and where his body should go so he can have the best chance of survival. There was a ledge that he was going to be launched off of, and he considered whether there'd be a patch of snow. It was summer, so maybe there'd be snow there, and if there was snow, how to break his fall by landing in the snow. And he thought about that lecture that he was set to give, how disappointing it would be if he didn't make it to go do that lecture. Then he thought about his family and how sad they would feel if he died. And that's just the beginning of his thoughts. The thoughts went on and on and on, and for him it felt like a very long time, when in actuality it just took a few seconds for him to have this 164-foot, 50-meter fall. He survived the fall off the freaking Matterhorn. After his recovery though, the main thing that stuck in his mind was the elongation of the perception of time. Time slowed down for Jost to infinitesimal moments within moments. From that experience, Jost became fascinated with this concept of time and perception, and he talked freely about it in his lectures. And this concept of time malleability stuck in the mind of one of his young students and friends, Albert Einstein. Now, Albert Einstein later came up with the theory of relativity, which of course states that time is relative to speed. And Einstein famously conducted thought experiments. This early discussion of perceived time may have partially influenced what later became his most famous theory. Now, Einstein's work changed the way the world viewed physics, especially concerning relativity and quantum theory. He published hundreds of scientific papers during the course of his lifetime, and here's where we get to Saturn in Pisces, in 1905. The year he turned 26, he published 4 groundbreaking papers. These papers forever changed the way people view space and time and mass and energy. Yes, Saturn entered Pisces in 1905. It all comes together, trust me. Einstein has a 9th house Pisces sun and his MC, which is the career point. He also has natal Saturn-Mercury conjunction in Aries, which is his 10th house. So he could draw a lot of foundational containers from the imaginal realm, sack with the handkerchief, and put them into practical use, which then became his theories and his papers. So that brings me to thought experiments in general. And what's that got to do with Saturn and Pisces? It's a very Saturnian use of the Pisces imagery realm, and even scientists can get on board with thought experiments, even though they're a little bit woo. Pisces allows Saturn to loosen its strict boundaries a little bit, open up the sack. This can bring compassion and understanding to our deep connectedness. We can more easily empathize with the experiences of others and find these very imaginative solutions. Lynn Bell says, just as the fish in the Pisces constellation swim in opposite directions, Saturn in Pisces is ambivalent. Saturn asks us to enlarge and encompass more, but we can feel frightened when our boundaries lose solidity. So there's the harder shot of Saturn in Pisces, is it's gonna make some situations feel uncomfortable, because where we want to have solidity and boundaries, there may be times when we won't have those, when we are going to have to rethink what the boundaries are. So this is where we can preemptively put some grounding in the imaginal world and actively utilize this same concept of thought experiments. There must be something to it. Einstein did it a lot. In a thought experiment, we can let our imaginations flow, and we can carefully observe and bring back something that can become solidified in the material world while Saturn is in Pisces. One practice that I recently learned about is called timeline jumping meditation. This allows you to visualize a future version of yourself based on the belief that we live in infinite timelines, that there are infinite versions of ourselves available to us. The developer of this type of meditation is a spiritualist, and her name is P the Fairy. P the Fairy, like a pea, peas, like peas, okay. But anyway, the name is irrelevant. P the Fairy is the... It's a little funny. It's not funny. Okay. P the Fairy is the developer. I'm gonna call her the developer. The developer says part of the practice's focus is about clearing out space. Then it's about receiving this version of yourself rather than trying to think them up. If there are infinite versions available to us, and there is a lot of potentiality, this version of yourself will appear in your mind. This version of you already exists, but you're making yourself available to be found. There's a Renaissance sculptor named Michelangelo, and he sculpted one of the most famous sculptures, well, lots of famous sculptures, but probably the one that's arguably the most famous is his sculpture of David. Michelangelo said there's a statue inside every block of marble, and it's up to the sculptor to uncover the statue that's already in the marble. The developer says the beautiful masterpiece already exists, and what you're doing every time you timeline jump is carving away at anything that's not that. I'll link more about timeline jumping in the description below if you want to read more about it. Also, that story that I told you about Jost Wintler came from a part of a book that I'm reading called After. A doctor explores what near-death experiences reveal about life and beyond by Bruce Grayson, MD. So if you're like me and enjoy yourself some good near-death experience information content, I highly recommend this book. So mark your calendars for Saturn entering Pisces on March 7th, 2023. It's going to stay there until May of 2025. And remember that Saturn entering Pisces is also closing up a 29-year cycle of Saturn's traveling around the zodiac. That started back in 1996, April 1996. The last time Saturn was in Pisces was May 1993 until April 1996. Those of you who made it to the end of my video here, I just want to say a special thank you to you, because you are the people that make all this worth doing. There's so many cool people that I get to interact with, and it makes all the difference in the world. This kind of content is a little different. This isn't your normal astrology channel, and I just want to thank the people that are supportive of being different. And I just want to say thank you. So emotional. Okay.